15.
How is that volume-wise? Do I need to stoop? Is that all right? Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming. As Eleanor said, I've had this terrible sort of cold and cough, and I thought if it had been yesterday, I wouldn't have been able to come, but I'm here. And, I mean, in a way, the last 5 by 15 thing I did, it was about the quiet carriage, and it was, by all accounts, absolutely hilarious. You should have been there. Somebody should have been there. But so today it's going to be altogether more serious and less fun, because I'm going to tell you all about this Russian film, which I'm sure the vast majority of you have seen. How many people have actually seen Tarkovsky's great film Stalker? Hands up. Great, that must explain why my publisher's face dropped like a stone when I told him that instead of... you see, I was contracted to write this book about tennis. And it was one of those great sort of huggy, kissy publishing moments, because, you know, Andy Murray was going to win Wimbledon, and, you know, tennis was going to get so big. And then it got to the point, I thought I wanted to write this book about tennis, but then it turned out I didn't want to. And so I started just for fun. I started just writing about this Russian film. And at the same time, I was kind of dreading that Andy Murray would go on and win Wimbledon, increasing the already intolerable pressure on me. But fortunately, he did his bit, and I continued not doing my bit. And my publishers, to their great credit, when I duly handed in this book about Tarkovsky, you know, it's like, here's the book about Tarkovsky. Wasn't it meant to be tennis? No, I'm sure we said Tarkovsky. They took it on the chin. Since some of you have not, since the overwhelming majority of you have not seen the film, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. It came out in 1979. And the story is incredibly simple, really. In this region that is never specified, this character called a stalker, not a stalker in the new sense, that is to say somebody who gets an obsession with Emily Maitlis and follows her around, but a stalker in the sense of a guide, really. He takes these two clients, one of whom is called Writer and the other of whom is called the Professor. He takes them into this forbidden zone. And actually, although it's not going to be we'll just show a little, while I'm speaking, we'll have a bit of the film showing. So we'll show the first bit now, Daisy. So yeah, he takes these two people into the forbidden zone, at the heart of which, it's claimed, is this place called the Room. And I love just the sort of literalness of that, not the Holy Grail, just the room. And in this room, it's claimed your deepest wish will come true. And it's as simple as that. That's really what the film involves. Writer is going there because he's a middle-aged writer and he's completely washed up. And for some reason, I felt this great identification with this figure, and it's obvious what his deepest wish is going to be, isn't it? I mean, it's more sales than Wilbur Smith, more chicks than Bukowski, more critical acclaim than Zabald. So that's what he's after. Professor, it's never really made clear what he's going for. But what happens is that this is the guy called Professor, and the striking thing about this film is, in a way, it's absolutely inappropriate for me to be talking about it in this very strict 5 by 15 context, because when I did the last one, I'd got to 15 minutes exactly, and Rosie started ringing that dreadful bell. You know, my time was I'd only just got going, really, and it was... Anyway, so, but the thing about the Tarkovsky film, it proceeds very, very slowly. It lasts for about 3 hours, and it's incredibly slow-moving. I think there are about 140 shots in it, which is an incredibly low number of shots, especially in comparison with something that's with modern films that are cut very, very fast. Now, the thing about the zone that Stalker takes them to is that it's a place that allegedly has these magical powers, and it has all sorts of resonances. On the one hand, it seems to be looking backward. It's not a film about the Gulag, but it's a film that's haunted by the memory of the Gulag and the camps. The great irony is that this place called the Zone, which the authorities feared for some reason, nobody knew what had happened there, it's cordoned off by barbed wire. And it's a place which has attracted people like the Zone, people like the Stalker, for whom it has these magical properties, and they want to go there. So there is this strange turnaround whereby freedom and everything you want lies behind the barbed wire. So this sort of repressive state, or wherever it's set, is keeping you away from this, from your dreams being realised. It's backward looking like that, but one of the extraordinary things about the film is that it was also forward looking, so that in almost no time at all, real life sort of caught up with Tarkovsky's vision. You'll remember that when Chernobyl happened, the reactor core was sealed in something they called a sarcophagus, and then they set up a zone of exclusion around it. I think it was a 30-kilometre zone, and then it turned out in this lovely way of life imitating art. Is that the end of the first clip? That's great, Daisy. We'll pause there. In this great way of life imitating art, these guides would offer to take people in to the zone of exclusion, and they would call themselves stalkers. I think this is one of the greatest films ever made, and one of the things that we're encouraged to think about is exactly what is the zone. And it becomes evident, I think, that the zone is, among other things, it's a journey into the wonder of cinematic space. And we're going to start showing another sequence now. We're going to watch the tail end of a very long sequence where they've been on a trolley car. If you play that note now, Daisy. This is the end of about a 5-minute sequence. And there is one of the miracles of cinema you'll see at the moment. They're in this black and white world. They've gone through the barbed wire, and you're wondering when are they going to arrive in the zone, and what's it going to be like? You can see he's looking around, wondering like a kid. Are we there yet? Is this the zone? And we too are wondering. What is this zone going to be like? How will we know when we're there? And a transition occurs when we're taken into this extraordinary world. And I'll just be quiet for a moment so you can experience it. If you imagine if you just bear in mind that shot we were seeing, that long tracking shot of them, the three of them on the trolley, you only saw one, that had gone on for about 5 minutes. And that moment when we move from black and white into colour like this, I think that is one of the magical, supreme moments in any art. And so here we are now in the zone. This place which the guy who's taking them there, Stalker, it's a place that he's put all of his hopes on, and it's wonderful, it's beautiful, isn't it? He says, I wonder if we're getting the subtitles or not. Yeah, here we are, home at last. And it's so he loves it. He's put all his faith in it, and it hasn't disappointed him at all. But you'll see that. So he says, it's how quiet it is, and of course immediately his clients, the worst kind of clients you can get as a tourist operator, they start grumbling and complaining almost from the word go. And the incredible thing throughout this film excuse me, is that this place, which is alleged to have all these magical properties, it is both incredibly magical and wonderful, and at the same time it's completely ordinary. And that tension between us thinking, yeah, this is the most incredible place we've ever seen, and our thinking, like the cynical, sort of rather jaded writer, that it's a completely ordinary place, is maintained all the time. And the zone is all the time sort of wrapping itself, it sort of reconfigures itself according to what the people in it are thinking. So when you think it's an incredibly ordinary place, it becomes completely ordinary. And then something very small but really quite wonderful happens. Now, the key thing to say, and we're about, I think, probably 40 minutes into the film at this point, and it goes on for another couple of hours, and eventually they get to the very threshold of the room where their deepest wish will come true. It's important to realize that it's your deepest wish. It's not what you think you most want. It's what you really do most want. So to go in there is quite a terrifying prospect because, for example, the guy who taught Stalker all about it, he was this guy called Porcupine, and he got back from the zone and found himself fabulously rich. Whereupon he killed himself because the zone had revealed that he wasn't this great spiritual guru that he wanted to be. He was somebody who just wanted money. So it's a rather terrifying prospect. And one of the things I think that makes the film so remarkable, it's both a literal journey as these three middle-aged blokes walk through the zone, but it also lends itself to all sorts of metaphysical speculation. It makes us wonder, for example, how do we go about finding out what our deepest wish is? And then also, it makes us wonder, I think, the proximity, or maybe this is just a sort of rather English take on it. I mean, is our deepest wish always going to be our deepest regret? Is the deepest wish only going to be forward-looking, i.e., from now on you can have what you want, or is it capable of actually allowing us to relive bits of our lives? And what I do in my book is alternate between talking about the film and talking about sort of stuff from my own life. So, it's really quite extraordinary how actually one's deepest wishes turn out to be quite modest. And I remember talking one time with my mum, and she, in a way, our version of The Room, where your deepest wish can come true, it's like the football pools or the lottery. And one time my mum said to me and my dad, what all I'd like to do if I won the pools is I'd like to go into the supermarket and buy the nicest piece of steak there. And I remember yelling at her, but you could do that now! And there's this strange way in which we do tend to postpone that which we think we most want, even though it's available to us. And although my parents were anything but rich, they could probably have eaten steak every day for the rest of their lives. And then after my mum died, my dad was saying to me, Mum, your mum, she did used to go to the supermarket and buy steak sometimes, always the cheapest cuts. And he said it was never very nice. And I said, well, do you? And we'd often had conversations about my dad's diet, because he had this terrible sort of diet. And I'd say, you've got to stop eating this shit. It's really, really bad for you. And he'd say, oh, I'm okay. It hasn't done me any harm. And I'd say to him, but you had cancer, and you've got a colostomy. You had cancer of the rectum. You've got a colostomy bag. And he'd say, oh, that's nothing to do with that. So this weird kind of thing. And then I'd say to him, but do you wish you had eaten differently? And he'd said, yeah, I wish we'd eaten more fat. And it was really sort of bizarre thing, because all the time that we were all, the rest of us were trying to cut down on fat. He felt it was one of the regrets of his life that anyway. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then the ramifications of going to the zone. I'm aware that the dreaded 15-minute point is arriving. We could just quickly move on to section 3, just to give us something to look at rather than just me coughing and spluttering. Here's another possibility. Actually, let's assume that the room does work. That you go there, you go into the room, and you go back, and nothing's changed. You're living in the same house. You're living with the same wife or husband. You're eating the same old diet, and nothing's changed at all. So you're thinking, I've been sold a pup. This really hasn't worked. So of course, what would you do? You'd phone this stalker and you'd say, listen, you sold me this holiday of a lifetime, saying it was going to my deepest wish was going to come true, and you obviously he doesn't pick up the phone because he's not going to take your call. So you call him, and you're really fed up, you're angry, and you're discontent, and you're furious, and you spend all your time sort of constructing these, aggrieved letters like you should have, or I'm going to get in touch with the ombudsman, or whatever it is. Only very, very gradually will it perhaps dawn on you that actually your deepest wish has been realized. That actually what it's brought home to you is that's the kind of person you are. You're the kind of person who actually likes to and it is possible. We shouldn't ever assume that people's deepest wish is for happiness or anything like that. Some people, and you see them on the tube all the time, their deepest wish is to be pissed off, dissatisfied, aggrieved, and miserable, and that's why I think the sort of the lessons of this film are so very profound. And well, that's the end of that. My 15 minutes is up, but maybe because I've been so heroic turning up with my cold, if there may be one or two questions I could quickly about the film by the 3 people in the room who've seen it, I could endeavour to answer. Meanwhile, we can let this just run. Yeah, please.
People were to see this film in, say, 25 years' time, do you feel they would be able to relate to it?
Oh, goodness me. I really think this is, it's got you can see there's a number of very specific sort of references going on in it. But I mean, if this film doesn't last forever, I don't know what will. There's a great joke, though, by the great David Thompson, who wrote the Biographical Dictionary of Cinema, who doesn't share my high opinion of this film. And he says, when we get there, I wonder what the room really will be like. What will this sort of dank room look like? And he says, I know what it'll be. It'll just be this dank, dark room where only one film is being shown, and it's going to be Stalker. But then he says rather ingeniously, but depending on how things go, it might actually at that point be indistinguishable from the local multiplex. But yeah, it will last for as long as there is as there is film. It's so timeless and profound. Yeah. I do actually say what my deepest regret is in the book, but it would be really, I'd be doing myself a major disservice. It would be a real spoiler, wouldn't it, if I told you? And also I'd find myself blushing like a 5-year-old as well if that was revealed. Yeah.
I haven't seen this, but I've seen Solaris.
Ah, yeah.
It seems that it's got very similar basics in a random world that we don't know about, and it's bringing up everyone's inner psychology. Is it basically the same film?
Sort of, yeah. It's bits of it are incredibly similar. That I don't think we're going to have the sequence here, but there are, this kind of classic Tarkovsky landscape of green trees and sort of breeze, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's in Solaris and it's in Mirror, and there is a similar sort of examination of, it turns out that. The guy, Chris, his name, the name of the main guy, it's that sort of thing of wanting to perfect that sort of failed relationship or marriage he had. By the way, I'm a great fan of the remake with George Clooney. I think it's a fantastic film. Well, to each his or her own. Yeah, let's hear from a man. Sure. Do you know, in this weird way, so it's based on this very short novel by the brothers Strugatsky called Another Roadside Picnic. And I knew that I really should read it. It was mad not to read it. And in some weird way, I felt a condition of my writing the book was that I didn't. But I know enough about it to know that it was no more than a sort of stepping off point for the film. And poor Tarkovsky made the poor Strugatsky brothers rewrite it until by the end they said, "Do you think we should drop the sort of science fiction element out of it entirely?" It's a bit, kind of incredible because it was a science fiction thing. And he said, "Yes, that's it exactly." So, and then the character of the stalker in the book, in the film, changed completely. He was a kind of drug dealer, sort of bandit type in the book, I believe, and in this he becomes a kind of real evangelist, a sort of believer, a holy fool. I should say it's a deeply religious film, and the final sequence in the film, which I really won't spoil for you, it's both one of the most moving and it's one of the most deeply religious things you'll ever see in a film. Even Richard Dawkins would be ready to convert to it. And I think that's well. Thank you very much for your questions. We've gone over time. Thank you for listening to me.